Welcome back, guys. This is the follow-up show to After Hours Drop Off. This is After Hours Rewind, where we go behind the scenes, tell some stories from the movie itself, talk about the characters, maybe a little bit about the actors. So thank you for joining us on the follow-up show. We still have a little coffee here, but it's time to switch over to the beer. All right, Behind the Mask was released in 2007. It won a handful of awards on the independent film circuit, and the rights were bought out by Anchor Bay. So Anchor Bay is in the horror genre field. They have a lot of franchises out there, and they kind of fumbled around with the rights. So, when this movie was released in theaters, it was only a limited release because they didn't really promote it right. So nobody really picked up and wanted to run with this film. So that kind of worked against this film a little bit. Now, in regards to the sequel, which we're going to get to, now they had the rights for the first part, and it didn't do so well, so they didn't really want to do a sequel. In the last episode, I did mention the Easter eggs that are strewn throughout this movie. So there's 13 that I found. And then there's 2 that the characters kind of added themselves. Did you see any?
Does that include cameos? These are just straight up Easter eggs, or these are cameos?
Straight up Easter eggs.
There's some that are just audio. I found 5, I think. And there's one actually I had to look up, which I told him about.
They're like really obvious, I bet.
Some of them are really obvious. Some of them are not. Some of them are Pet Sematary related.
I haven't seen any of those.
So we'll start with the first one. Now, the first one is one of the most obvious ones, and that is the Rabbit Red Lounge. So, if you've watched Halloween, the original one, or the remake, when Dr. Loomis finds the pickup truck, kind of on the side of the road, he sees a matchbook on the ground, and that is from the Rabbit Red Lounge. So
that.
Now, in the intro, where Taylor is starting the documentary, the lounge is right behind her. The sign is right to the right of her. And then, of course, there's the obvious one with the Elm Street house.
Yep.
So that one's in there. And then, of course, you have the cameo.
What's his face?
Kane Hodder.
Yeah.
So Kane Hodder is walking into the house. Sabretooth?
Yeah, isn't that him?
No. That's Tyler.
Tyler.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You're getting your horror people mixed up.
Listen.
Now, in front of the Nightmare on Elm Street house is the first Pet Sematary reference. Think about it. See if you can remember.
In front of the which house? I'm sorry.
The Nightmare on Elm Street house. The tire swing. The tire swing makes an appearance.
There was a tire swing
in that movie.
You're right.
Yeah.
I don't remember
that. It's
you blink and you miss it.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the next Easter egg that pops up is when Leslie's giving a tour to the crew, and he picks up 2 turtles. One's named Church.
Mm-hmm.
The other one's Zoe from Pet Sematary Part 2.
Yeah.
I never even thought about that.
I
remember he named them or anything.
Yep.
Yeah, I only have animals that I could eat.
Yeah, that was a great line.
That
was a great line.
Was that improv, or was that was in the movie?
I don't know.
Because it ended so awkwardly.
Yeah, because they all like,
Yeah, I was cracking up. That's where I was like. Anyway, we did the movie already, but that was definitely one of those where I'm like, is this a horror movie? Like, this is hysterical. This guy's a fucking joke.
We're gonna talk about that spin on the character too.
Yeah.
That comes up. Now the next little Easter egg is going to be for more hardcore horror fans, and that is when they arrive at Eugene's house. In his car on the back seat is a toolbox.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Yep. The toolbox is a reference to the Toolbox murders, and that came out, I believe, in 1974, 1972.
Okay.
So, now, the reason... We'll get into that when we talk about Eugene a little bit later. But so there's the toolbox there. And then later that night, when they're having the conversation and they're all talking, on the end table is the puzzle box from Hellraiser. Just sitting there as he goes to put his drink over it is the puzzle box. So that was a neat little one. All right, so now we fast forward to the next day. We're in front of the high school. And then as the new version that they discovered in the movie, she passes by girls jumping rope in white dresses from Nightmare on Elm Street. Yep. Then we have the librarian, Mrs. Collinwood.
Mm-hmm.
She is from the Last House on the Left, same character name.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so that's another one. Then Nellis Falls. Nellis Falls is Nellis Air Force Base in The Hills Have Eyes.
Okay.
And then we have...
I haven't seen that movie forever.
Now, one that is not out on the internet, and I don't think anybody's picked up on, is that Taylor likes to wear a lot of different sweaters. Mm-hmm. She has a zip-up sweater. She has a sweater in the beginning of the movie. In the one scene where it's early morning when they're getting ready to head to Eugene's, she has a sweater that is very similar to Pamela Voorhees in Friday the 13th Part 1. I looked at the pattern design's not the same, but I believe it's the same concept. So there's a reference to that one.
Sure.
In the mirror, when I asked you in our last episode, did you notice anything? There's a few things in that mirror.
Okay.
To the right of it is the Stay Awake or Nose Dose bottle from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1.
Okay.
And in the reflection of the mirror, referencing your favorite movie, is a set of blocks that are reflecting under a lamp. The first time it says Red Rum. The second time it says murder.
Didn't notice at all.
Wait, is when he put on the fire on?
Yeah.
So, staying in tune with the Shining reference, the music is playing in the background.
The music from The Shining?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Did you hear that?
You know what, man? No, I didn't. I'm just going to say no, I didn't.
So that we talked about the 13 Easter eggs that are the visual and the one sound one. Now, there's 2 character ones. The first one is when Leslie is in the mirror and he makes that weird face like that.
Mm-hmm.
I had done an interview with Nathan Basil, I think 2 years prior to that. And the one thing that he referenced in that interview was the remake of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Okay.
Donald Sutherland's character at the end of that movie is confronted by another character. She's across the street. Sorry, guys, spoiler. But he's one of those aliens, and he just makes that face, and he lets out this bellow, warning that person not to come closer. And that's just like, oh my god, he's one of those guys. And then, of course, the most obvious one is the homage to Dr. Loomis, by Robert Englund. Yes. And Robert Englund has mentioned it as recently on Donna Jean's Coffee House of Horror show that his homage was to Donald Pleasance and Dr. Loomis.
It was great.
Yes.
He nails it.
Oh, yeah, he does. So the film was filmed over 24 days, independent film. Really short time span to get something like this in, especially, factoring that you have Robert Englund stopping in, you have Scott Wilson, Zelda, and Kane stopping in for these their parts, the cameos that you were mentioning before. Now, the one thing that happened was not all the locations were secure. So they had to do a lot of rewriting of the scenes as they were going along. And I don't know, one of the scenes you might have kind of stuck out at you is when they're running up to the library. They're going up those back staircases and they're really like, oh my god, be quiet, be quiet. Yeah. That night there was a bingo game going on. And you don't mess with grandma's bingo game. So they had to, interrupt the bingo game, piss a lot of people off. They had to, hunker down for certain parts of the film, just to film, Robert Englund's scene there. Mm-hmm. And they only had Zelda for one night,
right? And
they had Robert Englund for 1 week, so they had to sneak in, piss a bunch of blue hairs off, interrupt them from winning their bingo, just to get that 10-minute scene in.
Hey, you know what? For the love of the art,
Yeah. Now, so there was that scene, and then there was a different ending.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the original ending was
they make out.
No.
She rips off the mask.
No.
And her and Leslie just go at it.
And then Doug comes in and joins.
Maybe. They do a lot of Eiffel Tower action.
Wow, she blows being a virgin. She really blows being a virgin.
Well, she saw What's-Her-Nuts freaking do a reverse cowgirl. She's like, what's that all about?
that looks fun. Let's try it 2 ways.
They hung out in that room for way too long.
Yeah.
They were in that room for a while.
Well, Todd.
Jotting down notes mentally.
Todd was all into that, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So this final scene was Leslie didn't die.
Right.
He was apprehended, and we have a huge court scene at the end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we have the court scene at the end. So we have a court scene at the end, and then we have Doc Halloran there, and they actually filmed this, where he says, Leslie's convicted, blah, 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 and he's like, you know what, bailiffs, take him out, rough him up, make sure that he gets to see his audience one last time. Now, they filmed this whole thing, but if you remember in the movie, the townsfolk were crazy.
Right.
They killed a little kid. They threw him off the fall.
Yep.
Right? You can only get 15 extras for the scene. So, when they filmed it and they looked at it, it's like, well, we don't have the crazy-ass people inside the courtroom, and we certainly don't have the press outside the courtroom, so they had to let go of that scene. But let's talk about the genius behind the film. So we have David Stevie, who is a writer, and this is one of his first scripts that he wrote. And he was a struggling writer at the time trying to make his breakthrough. And that script happened to pass through the hands of Scott Glosserman, who had graduated from college. This is his debut directing a film. And just to throw this out there, Scott is literally a student of the genre. He went to school. He wrote his thesis paper on one of your favorite films, The Shining, and was a big fan of Stanley Kubrick.
There you go.
So, we have 2 new up-and-comers here. We have an up-and-comer writer. We have an up-and-comer director. They debut with this gem of a movie. And then you have a studio that kind of screws it all up.
Isn't that always the case?
Yeah. Zelda Rubinstein from The Poltergeist.
Yep.
So that was one of the cameos when we were talking earlier before we filmed. It's like, she was in this movie.
Yeah.
So she was in this. This was her last film.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Wait, she's dead?
She's dead. She died 3 years after the movie was made.
Well, she was old in Poltergeist, too, so...
She was. Then we have Kane Hodder. He was actually in 2 scenes. I don't know if you kind of noticed it.
No, what was the other one?
To the end credits, he's the mortician.
Oh, was he the one? That was a guy?
Yeah. Of course, Robert Englund. Mm-hmm. So, the 3 of them add credibility right away to the film itself.
Yeah.
So we don't really have to dive into these people because, horror fans are going to know who these guys are.
I'm always impressed with independent movies, though, that can get people that are like, that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty big deal.
Well, yeah, and you got to figure, too, these guys, saying, hey, this is an independent film. Yeah, sure, I'll come over there for a day or a week just to help you out. So they're paying it back, Scott Wilson, for those of you that do know, he was in The Walking Dead as Herschel. The toolbox that we talked about in the earlier part of this episode for the Toolbox Murders. So it is not said in the film, it's only hinted at, that he was the Toolbox Murderer Vance in that earlier movie.
Okay.
And that he survived this long and he's retired from the game, but he was the actual murderer in the Toolbox Murderers.
That kind of would make sense because you said those movies were in the late 70s?
Yes.
So he goes on at one point and he says, when I did it, it was different.
Yes.
These guys came along and they turned it into an art form, which would mean that maybe with the exception of Mike Myers, Freddy and Jason would have come, and Chucky would have come after that.
Yes.
So that theory is out. That's pretty solid.
Yeah. So now Scott confirmed that he is the murderer of Vance from the Toolbox Murderers.
Oh, okay.
Right? But the rumor is that he was also tied to Black Christmas. That came out in, I believe, 1972.
Okay.
Did you ever see that?
I've heard of it, never seen it.
So Scott confirmed that he was Vance from the Toolbox Murderers, right? But the rumor was that he was Billy from Black Christmas. And the rumor is that he was Billy because when David Stevie wrote this film, and he wrote the script for it, he wrote the film in mind that Eugene was really Billy in real life. It's never been confirmed by anyone else other than David Stevie, and there is no reference to Black Christmas in those films. So you have the writer who has placed Eugene as Billy from Black Christmas, and then you have the director that ties him to the Toolbox Murderers. So 2 different takes on it. People have different origins on it. Only one kind of inches its way into the film.
The Black Christmas one would fit all the timelines.
Yes, it does.
Because Halloween was... What was the first Halloween? 78.
Yep.
What was the Toolbox?
74?
Oh, I guess... I thought you said late 70s. So I guess either one of them really would work with that.
Yeah.
One.
Now, the only problem with the Toolbox Murders is Vance supposedly dies in the first movie. Because he's stabbed.
Do they ever die?
Yeah, true.
Like, do they ever really fucking die? Let's be honest.
True. Doug and Todd.
Okay.
So, let's talk about Todd. Britton Spellings. So, Todd, he was the guy that was into the boobs and the blood, right? You mentioned it in our last show that he was kind of the fanboy there. It's like, hey, we can be partners here, right?
Buddies.
Right?
Yeah.
And you caught a lot of the Scream things, and you called them out.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a Scream reference too, but think about it now, right? This is the second killer in the Scream movie, right? He is the guy that gets killed by the mastermind. So I think he was totally down for whatever Leslie wanted to do. And he's like, all right, I'll be your sidekick. I'll help film you and kill you. That's why he was pleading for his life there at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, it could have been. Could have also just been saying anything he could to not die.
I don't know. I don't know.
You think he was really that into it?
Yeah, I think he was that into it. That's why I think... And I really don't see him having the courage enough to say, all right, guys, you run that way, and I'm going to run this way.
That's fair.
I think he was trying to make his little side deal there. It's like, you know what? I'm into this.
It is interesting how far, even though they eventually did, I guess, try to do the right thing and not involve themselves, like, they went along with it for a while. Like, they broke quite a few laws.
And then we have Doug, played by Ben Pace.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of hinted at it a little bit. Well, it kind of dawned on me as we were talking about, maybe he was in on the whole deal.
I had a minute to think about it there, actually, when you said that. And I don't know... Maybe that's up for debate. What you had said earlier about the other theory, which was that maybe he was actually the one in charge of the crew.
Yeah. Maybe he was Leslie Vernon.
Maybe he
Could
was. Be. There's no proof of that whatsoever, but you hold on to that dream. I'm telling you, that would be an idea for something where, like, the legend is true, and he comes back, and he's just a mess, kills off Leslie Mancuso, but then dons the mantle of the mask.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Scott.
Maybe.
Giving you ideas. Just remember us.
Yeah.
Now, with Ben Pace here too, we talked about Doug being in it for the boobs and the blood. I'm thinking, before we came up with our little theory in the last show, that he was really there for Taylor. He was like, man, I love you. Let's go do whatever. I'll film it and everything like that. And we seen it. You seen it at the end. I seen it at the end too.
Oh, yeah.
It's like he was totally going to kiss her at the end.
Look.
He was like, then I'll just kiss you on the head.
Yeah, he does kiss her on the head.
Yes, but he wanted more than that. You know that. Yeah, he had that look in his eye. We're going to talk about our main 2 characters. We have Angela Goethals Soder, that is playing Taylor, and then we have Nathan Basil, that is playing Leslie Mancuso, a.k.a. Leslie Vernon. But let's talk about Angela first. Did you know that she is Kevin's older sister in Home Alone?
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Yep.
Oh my God! You're at the French call. Les incompetents, right? That one? Yeah.
Yep. So she was in that film. She's been in Jerry Maguire, Spanglish, and she's been in a lot of films. She's a stage actress, which is something that we actually didn't talk about in this movie, but you couldn't tell. In this is the first of the 3 films that we watched. You couldn't tell that there was any stage actors.
Yeah, I guess not. They all play to the camera really well.
Yeah. So, talking about this movie here too, I think the way she portrays Taylor is amazing, right? We start out with her in the beginning of the film. It's like, I want to be Barbara Walters. Mm-hmm. I'm straight-laced. I'm going to deliver this way. I'm serious. And then you just see the character just slowly transform over the entire course of the movie where, hey, now she's getting pulled into this a little bit
bit more than she could chew.
Yeah, kind of she's starting to have feelings for Nathan and Leslie. And then at the end, she's like, oh my God, what did I do? So,
well, yeah, she decided to follow a serial killer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
unbelievable.
I think, I think she is a final girl, unlike any final girl that I've ever seen in any movie beforehand.
Well, if you look at the movie too, this movie is filmed is used so many underrated actors that actually have true talent, as opposed to people who are acting now.
Mm-hmm.
Because they play off slow transitioning of personality so well.
Oh yes,
and it's one of those things too. I was thinking about it when you were doing lead-in. I don't know if it's intentional, but it goes back to kind of my theory about how they're in this universe. The kids are such garbage actors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But Nathan, Angela, Ben, Britton, anybody else pretty much in the movie is good.
Eugene, Jamie,
They're really good actors. But the kids are such hot garbage.
They were just cattle. Leslie Vernon, or Leslie Mancuso, was supposed to follow that tradition.
Okay.
Where he was going to be that typical slasher. And then Nathan auditioned for the role and played the character the way he plays it in the movie. So Scott Glosserman's like, I think we have something here. And he kind of molded the character throughout the shoot around Nathan's personality. So, Nathan will joke about it. It's like, I just played myself.
Which shows.
Yeah.
So, not that I know the guy, but you could see, he's having fun.
Yeah, he was having fun with the film, and we got away from the traditional slasher, which really makes this movie special.
Something I wanted to bring up, and this is maybe a little off topic too, but just talk about tone and acting chops.
Mm-hmm.
The argument that Leslie and Taylor have.
The first one or the second one?
The second one.
Okay.
And we were saying how he's swiping away, he's pissed off and all that kind of stuff. That's the switch.
Yeah.
That's when the switch happens, and he never says another thing for the rest of the movie, we said.
Yes.
Right?
Until the end where he gets...
The one throw-off thing, right. But whatever. And I think I didn't get to make this point, and I don't know why I'm bringing it up now, but when he's about to kill Todd, and Todd's just not getting through to him and all that kind of stuff, that's when he's in slasher mode, and it lights off.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that too. So you'll notice that without the mask, it's Leslie Mancuso, right, and then with the mask, he's Leslie Vernon,
right.
And when he has the mask partially up on his head, it's like a cross. It's almost like two personalities. That are kind of conflicting with each other.
Well, that's it, right, and that's exactly what I got. I was like, I wonder if it's almost like a split personality disorder, because they don't really tell you why he's in therapy,
True,
or why he was in.
True.
It could be that it's a split personality disorder.
Yeah, and then how did he come across the legend of Leslie Vernon?
Right.
We're in Maryland and then Reno, Nevada. So how does he connect these two together?
Exactly.
So really interesting take on it. Yeah, but
layers. Lots of layers.
They were having a rap party, and somebody had mentioned, it's like, oh, look, Paradise Lost, found it. And they were referring to the book, right?
Yeah.
So the library scene was actually the last day of filming, and they found the book, and they placed it there, and it's like, oh, guess what? I'm going to throw this in the movie because I liked it. And there it is.
It's funny. I was wondering if that was a callback to something that either I missed, which I didn't think it was, but I figured that was like some kind of little maybe Easter egg for the staff sort of thing of the cast.
That's a cool Easter egg to throw in there. That brings us to the end of Rewind. I think this was a good movie to review here on our third one out. It changes up the dynamic a little bit. We watched the Possessed movie that screwed everything over. We watched Pet Sematary, which was great, which I screwed over because I taped over the damn good copy of it. And then we watched Behind the Mask. And
my Plex library is getting a little more full every week.
Yeah. And it's kind of cool that we talked about it. So we're going to kind of avoid some of the the stinky movies for the first season here. So we're going to focus on some really good movies. So we have Terrifier coming up. Okay. So for Terrifier month, which is next month, we'll do Black Christmas, which is pretty heavy. And one that I can't wait to watch with you, and that's The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing.
Never saw it.
I know.
Never saw it. I literally had somebody the other day like, what?
Yeah.
That is a what movie?
Well, guys, that brings us to the end of Rewind. Lots of cool things that are coming, so stay tuned. Remember, notification bell. Stalk us. Stab the like button. Catch you on the next one.
Bye!